Godzilla Kong, the New Empire, or Godzilla X Kong, the New Empire, or however you want to say it, is directed by Adam Wingard and stars Rebecca Hall, Brian Tyree Henry, Dan Stevens, and among others. And this is the fifth film in the MonsterVerse, where now it's basically a few years after the events of the last film, Godzilla vs. Kong, where you have Kong pretty much living in Hollow Earth, and he ends up pretty much getting on the task of having to come across this ancient civilization that's ruled by apes, and pretty much it has to do with him trying to go after and save the Hollow Earth from this villain called the Scar King. And along the way, he ends up pretty much getting help from Godzilla, who is on his own journey to pretty much become even more stronger. And there's also some other stuff that it gets into that deals with the humans that are trying to basically help Godzilla and Kong, trying to save the Hollow Earth while also defending the regular Earth as well from the monsters, and basically all hell breaks loose with all the monsters pretty much having to come together. Now, here's a little backstory. Now, this movie was directed by Adam Wingard, who actually directed the last Godzilla vs. Kong movie, and I've got to check out some of his other stuff because other than Godzilla vs. Kong, I also watched his previous movie he directed, which was Blair Witch, the third movie in the series. I've also heard The Guest is a really good, pretty underrated, or a pretty good film that he directed that I might check out one of these days. But growing up, I mean, what can I say? Godzilla and Kong have always been my go-to as far as monster films. Like, I have only seen a handful of Godzilla films, but I've seen, a lot of different versions of King Kong, especially going from the original 1930s version that I still hold as one of the all-time classics. I do have a fondness of the 76 version with Jeff Bridges that I enjoyed. But I haven't seen it in so long, and then I really enjoyed the 2005 Peter Jackson film. And then when we got word that pretty much that they were going to be doing a new MonsterVerse that was set up after the events of Godzilla 2014, it got me really interested in see what they were doing with King Kong, with Skull Island, Kong Skull Island and everything. And that one really surprised me, and it did have its issues as far as like some stuff that, because it's going at this point, it's one of those movies that it works as its own kind of B movie, but it's still a lot of fun. In fact, that's what I can really say of all these last few movies that they keep doing in the Godzilla and Kong movies, is that they're meant to be on that very like big budgeted type of B movies that I really enjoy. And coming off of the heels of Godzilla -1, which was actually probably the second, or I think one of the few movies I've seen that was Godzilla made in Japan. Knowing how great that one was, I knew going into this wasn't going to be on that kind of level because, well, for one, I knew going into it that it was going to be one of those, for fun type of monster films that knows what its identity, especially with the last movie with Godzilla versus Kong. And even in that one too, while it had some flaws in there, I was still very entertained by it. And that's the most I can say with the universe itself, that I see separate from the other films that Toho has done as far as the character of Godzilla, and also Toho has also done their own version of King Kong in the past. So I know fully well going into it that this is one of those franchises that you have to like really know what you're expecting, so to speak. And so going in upon seeing this one, I can say that I really had a fun time with this. It was everything that I really wanted to see out of Godzilla and Kong teaming together. It had some things that kind of held it back as far as being on the same level as Godzilla vs. Kong does, but I still thought it was still very entertaining and still kept me going. Now, to get my pros out of the way, I thought the visuals in this are fantastic. Godzilla and Kong, they really shine in their own right. Kong especially, he gets like the most screen time, surprisingly enough, compared to Godzilla. But I don't mind that so much because even from the other films in the series at this point, Godzilla doesn't always seem like he needs to be the main focus a lot of the time, because it seems like whenever time that he gets screen time, it's always about maybe 10 minutes, give or take, or less. But I don't mind it so much because any kind of small dose of Godzilla, I'm always still on board with. And hell, you could even say the same thing with some of the other films in Japan that they do. While his presence is a lot more well known, and that's kind of hard to compare because those are different films. I'm just saying that at this point, I don't think we're ever going to see a full-on Godzilla film where he's pretty much in every single scene. So I knew going into that wasn't probably going to be the case. But with that being said, though, whenever Godzilla does get to, duke it out with having his rematch with Kong and fighting new monsters and things like that, and also getting a good upgrade with the whole radiation that he does, that really got me into gear. And even when we get some like little small scenes where he's just on the run and stuff, or coming across some other battles, he's just a blast to always see, and especially with Kong. And Kong in this, I thought, also has a really deep story where he's not only, he has that vulnerable side that we kind of see a lot with a lot of the other films in his series, but also I like too that they give him kind of a little mini type of Kong, little ape that comes across with him that he treats basically like a son, and the way that the little ape basically tries to care for him and things like that, and just the connection and the bond they have, I thought was very well done and very charming, and it always made me smile every time he was on screen. And also seeing Kong, go after it and having the big battles, especially toward the end and stuff, is just fantastic. And it's everything that I really wanted to see out of this type of movie like this. But also the world building is what I have to really appreciate too, because they go into more stuff with Hollow Earth in this, and not only did it look fantastic and very beautiful in IMAX 3D, it was very glorious with the mountains and the deeper territory that we get to where we get into the ape civilization. That was, surprising enough, reminded me of a Planet of the Apes movie, which we're also getting here in the summertime soon. So there's Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes coming out that I'm definitely looking forward to. But with that being said, I like that they were able to, set up like a deeper place down in the Hollow Earth where you get to see this really mean, like, you get to see the Scar King that's introduced. And I have a pro-con with this character, but I thought that the way they do it, where he's basically having like all his groups of apes basically, being slaves and stuff, and having to work for them and things like that, and then you got some other ones that come in that are going after Kong and stuff. Like, we really get into a lot of great expanded on the universe that we were introduced in the last film on, and it really shines in this regard. With also having the Scar King pretty much having his own, not going to go into detail, but he pretty much has what I would call a pet, and I'll leave it there. But I thought the fight scenes were also well done. You also got, I'll get into some more of my cons with the human characters, but for the new additions like Dan Stevens, I thought was a lot of fun to see, and he definitely reminds me of like an Australian version of Ace Ventura in a good way. And funny enough, he actually worked with Adam Wingard in The Guest, so I definitely need to check that movie out now that I think about it. But he was great, and then his chemistry also with Brian Tyree Henry was also fun, and then also the stuff that's involved with the little girl that's introduced in the last film I thought was great, and they definitely do set up something that's interesting with her and Kong, and the way that it all ties together with the final climax I thought was well done too. And so there's a lot of great stuff that they do, they actually add on to the human characters in this. But there are some things that you do kind of wonder, like, okay, why exactly is this happening? Well, but there's also some cons I'll get into later that I'll get to. But I'll have to also appreciate the soundtrack in this was also fun. Hearing some needle drops that happen here and there are great. And then you also have the score I thought was really fantastic, and the 3D was really spot on. Like, it definitely kind of reminded me of that atmospheric 3D that I miss with a lot of movies like this, where you feel very immersed into the world and everything, and things that are just coming out of the screen here and there. They really got to me. Now, if I had to get into some of my cons, I will have to say that much like the other films, the human characters, they can be kind of hit and miss. I don't mind Rebecca Hall coming back in this. I thought she was really good. Being the center of pretty much leading the team and stuff and everything, and then also her bond with the little girl I thought was really good. But, having Brian Tyree Henry come back, I thought while he was funny at times, it almost does seem like he was kind of more of afterthought when it came to pretty much having him come along, to basically just do his whole documentary and stuff. But because really, as far as writing his character, they could have really done a lot more with him and why he really goes on this journey. But I still thought he was funny. I just feel like when every time they keep bringing in different type of human characters, you want to try to do something that at least has a purpose for some of these, because a lot of these movies at this point, it's no surprise that not really much of them get much character development. But they still don't bother me too much. They didn't bother me as nearly as much as I thought. So they're at least they're there to basically be representing the audience, and also giving exposition dialogue like you expect. But thankfully, the movie doesn't go over two and a half hours on that, because it keeps it on a very fast pace, so to speak. It keeps it going and it makes me feel very immersed the way the movie goes along with its pacing. But there's that. But then also, I will have to admit too that as much as I was getting to the Scar King, especially how vicious he can be at times, I will admit too that though that he does seem like he was more of like very underwhelming after a while, because he's introduced very late into the movie, and it really could have seemed like a better opportunity had to introduce him way earlier in the film that could have had some bigger impact the way that the story went along. I mean, as far as some other stuff too, I will have to admit that there are some points in the film that you do kind of question some of the rules that set up, because there's instances where Godzilla is pretty much going through the city and everything, and not knowingly, he's actually basically getting some people either injured or in some ways killed. And it did always kind of make me wonder if that was them going back to trying to make Godzilla like that neutral type of character again, because in the other films, as far as I remember, he never really got into any danger with any of the humans. Maybe you could say in 2014's Godzilla, but even that one I had to remember that he didn't kill anyone in that one. So I don't really know if this was just more of them trying to get more closer to what Godzilla was trying to be, but not willingly. But in this one, Godzilla is pretty much a full-on good guy. So it's not really too. It's kind of really conflicting whether or not that was supposed to be. It was very, inconsistent of what they were trying to do as far as him going through the city and stuff. But that's just kind of a minor thing. But that was just one of my only minor cons I would have, because other than that, I still had a really good blast with it. I still had a blast with this film, and so with that, I'm going to give the movie a compelling grade on the Film Freaks meter. So for those of you who have also seen Godzilla Kong: The New Empire, let me know, and also the other films, the MonsterVerse, let me know in the comments below what you thought about it, and thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in my next review. I'll see you later.